Hi, everyone. We're back today with part two of our conversation with Alex Gonzalez. Let's get started. Okay, so what kind of a role then did you take on when you came here then?
When I came to Canada, there was actually an ongoing project to implement RBI in the facility that I was employed. At that time, they were kind of having a contractor to run some RBI studies. But then you have the study, but then you don't have a way to put that type of thing. So that's where I start participating into the first rollout of an inspection management slash mechanical integrity software, so to speak, or platform. So that's where my experience in Canada was more focused on. And that's where, okay, I have to, in a certain way, leave my idea of being corrosion engineer away, behind. And now I'm focusing on this type of projects that help the company to adopt this type of platform. So initially, I was working on this adoption of these mechanical integrity programs. It was not just RBI, but also incorporating your thickness monitoring part of the application and inspection events being recorded as well. So that was my first exposure into the Canadian environment through this project. And from there, it's just, okay, and now knows, you name it, all this type of platform back and forth.
Did you move into this role by choice or were you asked to take this role?
It was just by us because remember, I was hired to come to Canada, but I didn't have a kind of a formal position, so to speak. I know that I'm going to work with the condition monitoring group, but then when I arrived months later, they told me, "Hey, we need help with this type of project on implementing this mechanical integrity platform." And say, "Okay, well, I'm here. You tell me what do I need from myself." So I'm kind of getting into this. Although I had a little bit of experience back then in Venezuela with implementing those things as well. So that's why it was not completely strange for me to jump into these things. So
Okay. So it was nice then you had the corrosion background, you had some of the inspection background, you had some experience with implementing programs. So you kind of were already set up nicely to be able to take the role on.
yes, yes. And also I was exposed to at that time the initial mindset of integrity operating windows. Internally, we call KPPLs, the Key Performance Parameter List. And I was exposed to that as well. And therefore, I was just looking into how can we implement this kind of parameter condition monitoring into the platform and plug it into mechanical integrity assessments. Because obviously, typically, when you do an assessment, it's just a static picture of your condition at that point in time. But the plan is totally dynamic. So you got fluctuations in temperature, pressure, pH, and that could have an impact on your assets, mechanical integrity wise. So I was also applying that little bit of knowledge that I had at the time into the project that I was working in here in Canada. And then eventually we ended up having a new API recommended practice for that. I think it's a 594 or something. I don't recall the name, but that it gives you an idea the importance of this for the whole industry that says, okay, we need to be focused not just on static pictures, but how we can implement that. And this is way before this world of AI and these type of things, right? So
Right.
we were having these kind of discussions of how we plug this into our assessments to look into time series analysis and look into how the operation in real time affect your assessment of your asset.
Alex, what do you think the most meaningful challenges along that line? Because when I think of IOWs and MOCs and some of these other programs, they look and they sound good on paper and they make total sense, but then making them work robustly in conjunction, with the other initiatives that are going on, like RBI, our end of useful life calculations, mechanical integrity programs. Well, I have two series of questions, and Brandon, you may want to break this up too. I don't know if it take too much time, but what do you see as the biggest successes that we in the industry have had so far along these lines of integration and, getting to nirvana or the perfect predictive mechanical integrity program where we have the desired level of availability for the lowest possible cost? That's really, I think, what most people are shooting for. Of course, in being compliant. What do you take away as, say, like some of the biggest victories we've had in the last couple or few years? And what do you see as the biggest challenges ahead?
To me, it's a victory, but also at the same time, it's a challenge. Is to bring non-mechanical integrity practitioners into this world is a victory because now we're bringing process engineer, we're bringing maintenance departments along with us. But it also is a challenge because I still think that breaking this silo mentality is really tough. So when you look into a mechanical integrity practitioner, no, no, this is just somebody from reliability department. When you should look into that, no, this is has to be plugged into the whole operation of your asset, operations, maintenance, ourselves as a practitioners have to be there. So it's good because now I'm seeing people acknowledging that, but it's still a challenging because I think that we are not there yet. So there is still, even I'm saying this because of my own experience that sometimes when I work on this type of projects of mechanical integrity platforms, they are still looking at this a project that is not related with operation. It's somebody from reliability departments or inspection department. So to me, that's the challenge that we need to see this as integrated with the entire operation. Up to a point, Greg, you know better than me that up to a point that assessment has to be signed by the general manager of the refinery or by the VP of the refinery that says this mechanical integrity threat is important for me to take attention of that, to pay attention because it will kind of derail my entire operation if I go down with a failure or a leak. Obviously, we will potentially affect people, but also the entire operation could be compromised. You have to shut down and stop the process. So that's where I think we need to keep bringing that message. No, 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 this is not a silo. You have to be with us. We have to be with you on that. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest challenging.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned that you have the experience in implementing RBI. And, obviously Greg and I have experience there too. And I think that's why it becomes so important when we run a process overview meeting or initial, discussion around it, that we do get the operations and we do get the process engineers in the room because one, we need their information, but two, it helps them feel like they're having a say, and it helps them learn and understand the process that we're going through and why we're doing it. It gives them the opportunity to ask those questions of, why do I even need to be here? Why is this important?
Right.
Right? Like, hey, we're not trying to cut out inspections and make things less safe. We're trying to understand where the value needs to be added and where we should be spending our extra dollars and our extra efforts to be able to keep everybody safe. It's interesting.
However, I have to comment on that we need to be very careful because on this we could be hooked in the hype of RBI. And I always preach internally at my company that RBI is just one out of many methodologies. So don't get hung up of, oh, what RBI says about this? What RBI says about that? Yes, definitely we need to have that kind of information, but it's not like RBI will solve everything. So we need to use a kind of a more like a Swiss knife approach. It's one of many tools. So not everything has to be done through RBI. And it's important to recognize there could be another type of methodologies, you name it, RCM, FMEA, whatever will be the case. So there's also an education part of our group into the rest of the groups in a typical refinery that says, yes, we can help using this RBI, but we also can help using this and this and this and these other things. Don't look at us like, what RBI says about this? Tell me what is your, because that kind of increment the chances of a silo mentality that says, you guys do your RBI and tell me if it's the right or wrong, and then we will decide after that. No, we have to get hand in hand with reliability engineers running, I don't know, wayable analysis or FMEA analysis, also participate on PHA's sessions, and they will also participate on our RCN session or on our RBI session. So that's how we have to be very careful to not be pigeonholed into a one particular methodology.
That's a good point. I just spent a couple of weeks ago, I spent 3 days. We brought some of our materials SMEs into town to have kind of a knowledge sharing session with some of our less experienced folks. And we had a really good discussion about how do you deal with mechanisms that RBI doesn't handle? And how do you make sure that you communicate to the client and to the facilities, hey, we did RBI on this, but RBI is not going to handle your brittle fracture issues all that well, or polyethylene cracking. Like, look, we're going to turn it on, but like once it happens, it happens. Like it's more around avoidance as opposed to management. So yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks, Alex. That was really good. And any cautions that you want to give as we move forward in such a hyperbolic rate of speed with technology, based on all your years of experience and what you've seen go on? And I know personally and professionally that you've been involved heavily in some digital transformation there as well. But taking all this into consideration, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with all your years of experience?
Well, I'm concerned a little bit because we are moving so fast that we are actually leaving a little bit behind a generation that is struggling to adapt into this very fast technology, right? So we are talking about inspectors that are really good at what they're doing, but they have many, many years of experience. So now they are in the brink of retirement, and then you throw these big platforms, everything is automatized, and then everything is just so fast. And now it's using tablets and using AI. Yes, generations younger than that generation will adapt quickly, but we want to be cautious because that is a human resource, very valuable, that is going to retire soon, and we don't have that kind of transition or handover programs to avoid that brain drain, so to speak. So I'm kind of concerned on that, to be honest. We don't have a plan on how to take advantage of that very good knowledge and incorporate it with these new technologies. Reality is technology is here. So even if you want to resist, you have to be embrace that type of things. Now you kind of embrace in a different ways. And my take is just augment your brain, your personal experience, your knowledge, rather than replace that. AI and these machine learning programs definitely can augment what you already know, what your experience is. what you can bring into discussions of mechanical integrity topic, but don't hope that everything have to be done by AI. We have probably some kind of not so pleasant episodes where the AI hallucinates, brings you something that is not real, and at the end of the day, the AI is not accountable. You, human person, is going to be accountable for the decision that you make. So be embracing that, but be aware that you still are in the driving seat.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, to understand, a lot of times us technical people don't understand or appreciate or spend much time thinking about the commercial aspects of what are driving things. But when you look at these people talking about building these huge, building more power plants to support huge data centers, to support AI and all this kind of stuff, there's a massive amount of money behind these things and energy and promises of money. And I think if I interpret what you're saying right, hey, all this stuff is going to come. It's not a matter of if, it's when, but let's manage it properly. Let's use it properly. Let's manage it properly and not allow ourselves to get swept up in the hype and make decisions that we may regret later because we didn't do enough due diligence, didn't think enough about it. We just got caught up in this thing and went along with it, hoping for this paradise on the other side, but didn't really take the time to put a good, solid plan together to make sure we were going to get there.
And some of those AI models are as good as your training data is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have no training data or poor training data, then the AI model probably will spit out fast, but spit out something that is not really good at that particular problem. So that's where, again, you connect that with taking advantage of older generations that they are not retiring just yet, and then pull that knowledge even internally at companies doing just kind of internal or private or custom GPTs to plug that knowledge that you have internally at your companies into a kind of a custom GPT to then have a good training data.
And I was thinking of an example where a company had just made a decision on some sort of an APM or EAM system they were going to buy, and another major software company came in and said, "Hey, we got one of those too, and it's just as good." And the executive VP said, "Well, I'm going to put my team of SMEs together, and they're going to take a look at what you've got, just like they did with the other one." And they came back eventually and said, "Hey, this thing's not ready for prime time yet. It's not ready to go." But there's so much of that going on out there. And that's when I was using the term, don't get swept up in things. Make sure you do your due diligence and make sure that you review these things, because you could grow to regret it later if you don't, because you're talking about millions of dollars in investment.
Yeah, definitely, and this is without being political is a touchy point, right? Because
Yeah.
there is this pressure of selling things that you probably don't need it, or they are not ready for you because
Yes.
it's just half-baked solutions at this point in time. Yeah, definitely that will improve with time, but at this point in time, probably it's not ready. So you have to be aware of to kind of split what is useful and what is just vaporware.
Exactly. Very important. Due diligence. Don't skip it.
Correct.
Where do you see the best place either right now or maybe in the future? And I know that machine learning and AI, those concepts are somewhat different, while similar, somewhat different. Where do you see potentially the best place to use? You mentioned building a training database of knowledge. Where else do you see value in trying to implement those types of technologies?
Well, I guess I don't want to build another silo. So that's why I just wanted to kind of expand on my vision and look at the forest rather than the tree. What I'm saying with this is just looking at a more holistic platform, where my idea is just to be an open platform, not very close to a specific vendor, having this platform where we can share and pull structured and unstructured data from many multiple sources. And then from there, you can have all this data at your disposal. Then you can plug in a machine learning model or just simple look at correlationships. This asset contains these measurements, and then you connect that with your corrosion control document that says these are the damage mechanisms, and then looking into potential time series and see what is temperature in the past month, in the past year. But that has to be in a more holistic way rather than creating these pockets of excellence that are really good, but at the same time, it's just an internal silo. So only few people can get access to it, or you don't have a way to communicate this data outside of this little silo. So my ideal world, so to speak, is just having a common platform where you can plug in machine learning models, but also you can, even nowadays, the trend is just augmenting that with the AI bots, that you can actually talk to the bot and say, hey, show me out of my data what is the corrosion rate in this particular circuit and why is so different than my initial assumption that is on my corrosion control document, that type of thing. But if you don't do that properly, you will create this another silo. And that's where we have to be very careful.
That's a really cool idea. I'm thinking through like 20 years ago, that's not possible because everybody, right? I mean, you're not going to find one single vendor that can handle the entire thing. But now with everything moving towards a cloud-based, web-based interactions and APIs, right? The application programming interfaces moving in that space. I mean, if you build yourself a single spot and then you had everybody be able to set up an API, it's doable. It's actually theoretically it's doable right now, whereas it wasn't before.
Correct. And I think that we are actually on the brink of not being theoretical anymore. So I know some companies that are working on that kind of space to bring that. And the key thing is a common platform is not just a tool for reliability or a tool for the inspector. No, 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 no. You as a processing engineer can jump in and look at time series analysis and look at materials of constructions and look at whatever is related to a particular asset. Is quite open and have to be democratized in a sense that everybody have access to it. In that way, yes, it's just kind of the end goal to have these type of things. But I think that companies are really doing these type of things. Maybe not in the mechanical integrity area just yet, but eventually we as an end user will force that asking these type of things. If I go to a particular vendor and says, do you have this? No, I actually don't have that. But then they have that in the back of their mind. Oh, this is a potential client that is asking us to have these type of things. Let's work on that because it looks like a good idea to implement. So we are demanding that type of things, and vendors potentially could react, obviously for businesses purposes, but also at the end, it will help us to do our daily job way better.
Nice. Okay. I like that. So, okay, so circling back a little bit, you've helped roll out across an entire enterprise an asset performance management system. From a maintenance standpoint, from an inspection standpoint, it's a tool to be able to help manage our inspections. What would you say, looking back, because I think you've completed I think you've pretty much completed that whole project or getting pretty close if you haven't. Looking back at it, because once you're in the middle of it, like you're in the thick of it, it is hard to get out and be able to see that forest. What would you say were some of the best decisions that you made and recommendations? And what do you think looking back, you're like, I'd do this differently?
My biggest regret on early projects that I try to not repeat on current projects that I have is just have a top-down buy-in. It is really, really difficult to do a bottom-up approach. There is so much resistance for change, and people will not kind of see the value of what you're doing. And it's just like a huge undertaking bottom up. That's where something that I learned from my initial project. Eventually, we finished that project, and then eventually I get into another project to years later to replace that to implement a new one. So I have quite an experience on these mechanical integrity platforms implementation. So my biggest regret on that sense was like that. So in initial projects was just bottom-up approach, and it is difficult because, to be honest, I have to convince senior leadership of why this is a good idea. But yes, at that time I was just a simple engineer dealing with a general manager or a VP of a refinery is not gonna fly. So I think that in future projects, as we say, we need to get the buy-in from the senior leadership, not just for funding, but also for support, in a way that when I just reach out to a process engineer and they don't see the value of this, then somebody is kind of backing me up and say, yes, you need to help with this type of project because there is a value, but also there is a big interest from the senior leaders on this type of implementations. So I would say that's where I'm going to do going forward. If you don't have a senior leadership support, it's really challenging.
I was recently in Brazil giving a talk about RBI, and one of the questions I got was, what's one of the most difficult hurdles that you come across as a consultant coming in? What's one of the most difficult things that you deal with to help support companies and facilities? And I said, making sure that you have buy-in across the full ladder. Having that buy-in is the most important piece, because if you don't, and as you said, if the top dog, if the VP, if the GM, whoever it is, even the chief, if the chief inspector doesn't really have that buy-in, it's good luck. Good
Yeah.
luck. And you know what they asked me? They said, well, so how do you fix that? And I said, well, it's a cultural thing, I think. It's the culture of the facility, the culture of the company. And you really have to try and figure out how to fix that, and have everybody into that type of culture as opposed to, whatever they've been doing before. So it
And
really truly is that level of needing that buy-in.
and believe it or not, going back to our early discussions about networking and using LinkedIn type of thing, this is where your soft skill plays a part, because
Mhm.
then you have to start looking into having this conversation with your chief, having a conversation with your inspectors leads that probably have 30 years of experience and they are not interested in applying these type of things, right? So this is where you use this type of soft skill and say, okay, let me show you the value. We are not going to replace you. We are going to help you to make your work better and faster and more efficient. But it's just not something that you declare and everything is going to happen. It's just a constant communication and going into this type of talks. So that's where a good segue to connect both the technical world, but also the soft skill world, networking, and talking about this. Definitely, it's not easier said than done. It's just it takes time. You will get people that just reject the change just for the sake of rejecting the change. They don't see the value. They see this as a threat, and no matter how many discussions you have, they are fixed on that. But with your little help from senior leaders, that's something that it could happen.
And going back to some of our earlier discussion about the ESOP, is that if all of our employees behave like shareholders, so it takes, from what I hear you saying, it takes intention, paying attention to the soft side of things, because it's about people, even more than it is about technology, right? It's about people. And being able to communicate to them what's in it for them and what their role is in it is important. And like you said earlier about something else, Alex, I don't think it's a one and done thing. It's got to be intentional, it's got to be consistent, and it has to be persistent.
Well said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that helps a lot to assure sustainability as well. And that's huge. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people implement these big programs and they were all well thought out for implementation, maybe had all these great procedures and all these great software programs, but at the end of the day, now they're worried about, is it going to be sustainable? Now we've done the initial corporate paid implementation for this whole program. Now the plants are going to have to pay for it and they're going to have to run it. Those guys are all stakeholders. And that's why they worry about sustainability often. And I think that's a valid concern, but you need to think about that up front and not at the end, you know?
And you brought some kind of interesting point that is like having a good champion supported by your senior leaders. I compare the
Absolutely.
champion with a elastic band. So the champion hold these pencils together. Without the elastic band, everybody goes a different path, different ways, and everything is in disarray. So having the champion, but also not a champion, is just having that idea that a champion is not a person, is a role that when Greg goes out to do something else, then Brandon can take over and continue the effort. But at the end of the day, is this role that have to keep everything together and lead that to not avoid momentum or inertia. Because then you're right. We implement these things, and 3 years later, it's like, oh, nobody's using this anymore. Type of
Right.
thing.
That never happens. That never happens. Come on now.
I remember in the early days of RBI, I'd go into an office for a meeting and I'd see this big 3-ring binder up there that says RBI on it that was done like 4 years ago. And I'd ask them, are you using that stuff? And they're like, well, not really. I mean, you know, it was like, oh my God.
It's like, thanks for the money. Appreciate
Yeah.
Well, so Alex, I mean, over your career, right? I mean, you started as a corrosion engineer working in a lab. You did inspection work. You moved to Canada. You're now in a corporate role. I mean, what advice would you give to somebody coming out of college or somebody just coming out of tech school? What type of advice would you give somebody to be able to help them maybe with their career, add some insight for them?
Maybe I have to ask advice to them the other way around, because if you think about it, the amount of information that this new generation have at their disposal is mind-boggling. I mean, when I was just being a college student, yes, I have to go into a physical library and look for a book for mechanical properties or something like that. This generation have everything at the fingertips of a keyboard. So I guess my advice is have a structured plan. Otherwise, you will be, and it happens to me at this point in time sometimes as well, is all over the place because there is so much information and you don't have a structure to funnel that type of things into what's your end goal, what you want to learn, what you want to propose, what is your end goal into a final product. You will be derailed with the bombarding of new things and information. So my kind of advice, so to speak, is prepare yourself with a very structured program of how to take information in, and prepare yourself to produce the end product that you want, taking a lot of information for sure, but don't lose the end goal. I don't know, Greg, I know that you are quite familiar with the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits,
Right.
and I think they sharpen the saw or
Well,
some.
the very first one is begin with the end in mind.
Here you go.
Don't take your eyes off the prize. You know,
Correct.
I always like to encourage people in projects to just identify 5 critical success factors that are going to help you achieve your goal. And during the course of that project, don't take your eyes off of those 5 factors. And if you start getting distracted, going in other directions, just point back to those 5 critical success factors and say, how will this help us achieve these objectives so that we can achieve our goal?
Indeed. So to answer your question, Brandon, probably my kind of advice is just to keep yourself hungry and open to learn new things. I experienced that myself. I was back in 2015, I decided to take a master program in something completely unrelated with mechanical integrity. I was just taking a course, a master program on sustainable energy development, and keep open, but at the same time have a structured program. When I went into that program, it was not just to wing it. It's just like, okay, this is a formal program. I have to put time and effort on that. So the same thing with the mechanical integrity topics. So focus on the end goal of what you want to achieve. For younger generation, there is no kind of end of information available. So don't worry about it. Just create the habits of looking into create that end goal and pursue into that. Otherwise, you're going to be at the whim of the latest flavor of the month, so to speak, and it's not going to help you in the long run.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. Because you're right. There's so many. I mean, I remember when the AI, I mean, we're still in a boom, right? We're trying to decide if it's a bubble or not. But when ChatGPT first came out, and then it was like every day there's a new AI app coming out that can help you with this and help you with that. And then there were guides on which one's best for what. I mean, you're right. And I mean, that was just this year, right? I mean, just getting completely bombarded with all this new information and places to get information. I remember middle school learning how to look up things in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, like I don't even know if I've seen one in the last 25 years or whatever. So, no, that's pretty good advice. So, Greg, you got anything else?
No, just that I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion and looking forward to our next one. Alex, anything else you can think of?
No, thank you for inviting me to this. I feel that we talk not into details about the mechanical integrity topics, going down to materials corrosion, 1 1/4 chrome type of things. But I enjoy to look at a little bit of a different view compared with the other renowned guests that you have had in this podcast. So I actually appreciate the opportunity to participate and bring my perspective into this.
It's been great. It's been absolutely fantastic. Your perspective has been very different than any of the other perspectives I think we've had. So it's been very nice chatting with you.
Same here,
Thank you.
Alex. Very refreshing. Really enjoyed the discussion, my friend. Look forward to the
Thank you.
next time we get together.
Awesome. Likewise.
All right. Well, wonderful. Well, Alex, thank you again for joining us. Greg, until next time, we'll see you later.
Peace out, dudes.
Thank you for listening to Upon Further Inspection, a Mechanical Integrity podcast. This episode was co-created by Inspectioneering and Core Solutions. Our producers are Nick Schmoyer, Jocelyn Christie, and Jeremiah Wood. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. Listeners should seek their own qualified advisors for guidance. If you enjoyed this episode, please join us next time wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until then, stay safe and stay informed.